My name is Kevin Hines, and in the year 2000, I nearly died by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. I was depressed, I was terribly suicidal, and I thought I was a burden to my family. This was the furthest thing from the truth. I am beautiful, and so are you. Life is the greatest gift we've ever been given or will ever be given. So live it with me, and be here tomorrow and every single day after that. Welcome to the Mental Health Marvels Podcast. Welcome to the Mental Health Marvels Podcast. I'm Kevin Hines, suicide prevention activist, author, and filmmaker. This is my friend Cruz, who's our podcast guest of the day, and our co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Evans, the indubitable Jeffrey Evans, the wonderful, the great, the man, the myth, the legend. He is a brand developer and the strategic networking expert at whoyouknowinc.com. And we're with you today to bring you a great message of hope right here in Hope Nation. So Chris and I go way back to our heyday at Archbishop Reardon High School, where we both learned a bit about video production, but you took it to the next level when you got out to LA and began doing film work and going to film school and getting it all done. You went to the New York Film Academy to study film. You've done short documentaries for the Oakland Police Department. Your first job was working at an LA sex toy company. We're going to get into that. That sounds juicy. You launched one of the first YouTube channels ever. I mean, this is amazing. Can you break down your story from childhood to adulthood briefly, and then tell us about how you got into film?
Gotcha. So it all started at the sex toy company. No, I'm just kidding. So I think film really, I really just started getting into film and sort of developed my interest in film at Reardon. And I took a film class there, and one of our classmates there had produced a short film. I think they reenacted, this sort of like Matrix theme, where they were doing like bullet time and all that sorts of stuff. And in my head, I was like, you know what, I could do that. You know what I mean? Like, I think there was I was involved in sports a lot, and so I had this sort of competitive nature in me. And I sort of wanted to sort of one-up that, and so I think that sort of like triggered, that sort of drive to want to get into film and to see what I can do with it. And so my mom actually purchased a camera for me, even before that. But remember that electronics store, The Good Guys? It was the competitor to Circuit City. And so
Good Guys and Circuit City blasts from the past. They're about as synonymous as Blockbuster. My God.
Yeah. So I started shooting vacation videos, and my brother purchased like this random editing software for me because he was one of the few people that actually believed in me and felt like I can actually do something with my creativity. And so I just started messing around with stuff, and then. My older cousin, we were big Matrix fans and Star Wars fans, and we just basically started reenacting certain scenes in our backyard, and we would place the camera in 4 different positions, and we would study and rewind and fast forward the scenes in these movies and basically try to replicate it. And it just started to become like a little hobby, cool, fun little hobby that I would do after school and on weekends. And my parents, they're very, I guess you could say, traditionalist. They didn't want their children, like I had 2 older brothers, and they wanted all of us to get into like med school or to become nurses, male nurses. Nothing wrong with that profession. And initially that was my main focus and my main drive. Like I was gonna actually do that. But just something in me told me to, take a chance. And so I was at a cafe in San Francisco once, and going through the magazines, and the New York Film Academy ad showed up, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go out there and go for it. I didn't even tell my parents, so I had some savings saved up and flew out there to New York, and did this sort of like one month training program. It was kind of like a boot camp, and I remember the first day that I was there was about 102 people. Like, it was packed, and first day of class lasted literally 2 minutes, and the director of the program there was like, you know, if you want to get into television and film, it's not what you see on the magazines or on television. It's not the red carpet stuff. There's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, and there's probably a lot more lows. And so if you're interested in going on this long journey and dealing with a lot of like shitty moments during this process, like, come back tomorrow. And so the next day I showed up, there were only 8 people, which was insane. And his message was, this is basically a microcosm of the industry. Like, you got to be able to mentally, be strong, and you got to be, you got to believe that if this is what you want to get into, you got to be able to basically commit to this for the long term. It's not about what you're going to be able to achieve in the short term. You know what I mean? So, for me at that point, I mean, I had already made the trek all the way to New York. I didn't tell my family and stuff like that. So, at that point, I think, I had already committed to that journey, so to speak. And so that's sort of how my journey in film kind of began.
You began at the New York Film Academy, and it really began back when you were a kid making those home movies.
Yeah.
And when you look back at those home movies today, what do you think about?
I can't even, I don't even know where those are. Like, I wouldn't even be able to pull it up. But I would say, the most valuable experience I got before coming out here was doing these little short documentaries for the Oakland Police Department. I remember the last year that I was there, excuse me, there was about 300 homicides that year. And so my oldest cousin, who was sort of like one of my mentors, took me underneath his wings. He saw potential in me, and so I think he wanted to kind of get me away from, the bad crowd or, the uninspiring crowds that I was sort of hanging out with. And so, he told me, hey, why don't you shoot a couple of, videos for my cadet classes. And, I just messed around with those videos, and then, 2 weeks later, I get a call from him, and, I get a meeting with the chief of police from the Oakland Police Department, and they want to basically sign me on as a vendor to basically do all their marketing videos. And then that ended up turning into dealing with the city of Oakland and seeing the bureaucracy there in that city, and a lot of politics there. But it was probably the most valuable experience, just because I was basically thrown into this sort of like adult world. You know what I mean? Where you're dealing with people in the city, and you're dealing with the police department, and you're dealing with all the crime that's there. And so, here I am, like, filming prostitution abatement procedures, which is basically like me sitting in a van, tucked in with officers, and I can hear everything that's happening, because there's basically a woman, a female police officer, who's sort of like dressed up like, a prostitute. And so you can kind of hear everything that's happening when random people are just stopping and basically saying stuff like, hey, how much for a sucky, stuff like that. And so it was crazy. Like, there was one point where I felt like I'm gonna say that I almost got killed in the line of duty, because during that time we were actually going out and they wanted to, like, basically arrest a guy, and one of them kind of like got loose and was like digging deep into his coat, right, and like literally running straight at me, and I'm just here holding the camera, filming this whole thing. And one of the officers basically tackled one of the guy, like a linebacker, and so got him on the floor, and they're like, hey, you know what, like, this is the line of duty. Like, it's interesting because they made me sign something that I didn't even read before, so here I am, like, super young, naive, I don't read anything, I'm just signing stuff, and basically it was like, hey, if anything happens in the line of duty, we're not responsible.
Yeah. Wow.
And stuff like that. So just kind of cool, like, just kind of being up on helicopters, filming SWAT teams jump off of helicopters, and being in a couple of high-speed chases and stuff like that, and feeling the adrenaline and rush, and just kind of seeing that world, and the relationships between the officers and the people that are on the streets. These people on the streets in Oakland, they know these officers on a first-name basis, so it's kind of interesting. Like, they'll put them behind bars, they'll come out the next day, and so there's sort of like this interesting relationship that happens. between these officers and these people on the streets that are up to no good sometimes. But you know, that's life in Oakland, and
But that started your film career.
but that started my film career. Yeah, definitely. So I felt like, you know, that experience more than even film school, probably, you know, I would say it was probably more valuable coming down here to LA, you know, just because I was getting real life experience dealing with people in the city of Oakland who run that town, and dealing with, you know, the chief of police and all of these higher ranked officers, and just getting that hands-on experience of being out there in the real world.
And the real grind, getting it done.
And the real grind, you know. So I did that for about 4 years, you know. So I probably shot 5 or 6 different like short documentaries that they would show at the end of 26 weeks, because it was basically 26 weeks of training. So I got to interview maybe over 500, 600 officers during that time frame. So it was, and it was pretty good for me, because I think that was good training in the sense that I got to understand like different personality types, what drives these people, coming from different backgrounds, coming from different cities. So I think for me personally, like that's what I kind of took in, which was, man, these people were driven enough to go through 26 weeks, 7 days a week of nonstop training, and going through all the pain and the grind, and you know, getting challenged mentally, getting challenged physically. So for me, I felt like, man, you know what, if I can put that in a little capsule and kind of take that with me anywhere I went, you know, like that's something that I would do. And sure enough, that's what I did when I moved down here to LA.
How did your film style grow while doing that? How did it develop?
A lot of experimentation, you know. I think back then I was a film score nerd. Like the music that I listened to mainly was like film scores, like Hans Zimmer. I don't know if you're familiar with these film score people, but like that was the music that sort of like drove me like emotionally and artistically, you know, because like, you know, it's like you listen to music, it kind of dictates how you feel sometimes.
Yeah, you bet.
And so like when you
it
watch,
alters your brainwaves and brain patterns,
Yeah,
so it absolutely dictates how you feel.
when you watch certain films, right, like you just feel like the emotions are heightened during certain moments in the film. So I actually did my thesis on on film scores, and so I think that's how I got involved in it. But I think usually for me, it started off with music. You know, like that was sort of like my sort of like process in terms of coming up with ideas. And so I would listen to certain scores, and I would sort of ask myself, how do I feel during those moments? And I would ask, you know, I'd figure out ways to apply that to these things that I was shooting. So, but yeah, you know, like it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that my style of filming, you know, these documentaries in Oakland, I kind of do the same things. I kind of do the same stuff that I'm doing right now with, you know, all these other projects that I'm working on. So it definitely supplied me with that foundation, for sure.
So your film journey through the Film Academy, getting to LA, after your work with the Oakland Police Department, you ended up in an interesting position. Where did you go in an interesting position? I'm laughing because he was in a very interesting position. I
was involved in missionary
work. Doggy style, everything in between. You started your first job in LA working at a sex toy company. And I want you to break down what that was like, and let's all be adults for a moment. What how did that happen, and what did it lead to?
Like sex toy company. Why?
Why?
And what were the vibrations?
that you received?
Well, okay.
We're 12-year-old
yeah.
boys. What is wrong?
No, so I mean, like the whole time I was in Oakland doing these videos, and it was a great experience. But I felt inside of me my calling was like to go down to LA, and you know, so sure enough, I just packed everything and moved down. I had my cousin that was actually working at Oakland. He moved down to Burbank, and you know, he started to become he started his career, continued his work being a police officer in Burbank, and so I had somebody at least to transition with down here. So it like I just came down here with nobody I didn't know or whatnot. But so anyways, came down here trying to look for jobs. I was living at an apartment on Riverside Drive, which was like a block away from the Disney studios. And I remember for like the first 6 months that I was here, just basically, I know, listen, everybody has their LA story when they move here and stuff. But for me, it was like, hustling, trying to look for jobs. And I had no idea. Like, I thought it was like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to fill out this resume and like hand it in and, wait for these recruit people to call me or whatnot, and
become the next Steven Spielberg.
And become this next Steven Spielberg, exactly. And I think I had like saved 48 different resumes. I still remember that.
Wow.
I remember like just applying to all these different places, and like I remember one time I even just went straight to Disney. And the security girl was like, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" I was like, "Hey, I'm just looking for your HR department." He's like, "No, you need to call and like come back here, or like you need to have an appointment." And so there was an editor that was living in my apartment at that time. He was like one of the editors for Grey's Anatomy. And I remember one day we were just sitting like at the poolside or whatever, and he was like, and I told him, I'm like, "Hey, I've been trying to like look for a job and I'm sending my resumes." And he was like, "Well, it's interesting. I've never known anybody who's gotten a job through a resume down here." And he was like, "Wait, I don't understand. Like, so what do you mean? So how did you get a job?" He was like, "Well, yeah, because somebody knew me and he referred me." So he was like, "It's just all a bunch of referrals." And so during that time, couldn't find a job. One of my friends up in the Bay, who was a graphics artist for CBS, and who I was close to, we still are today, but he called me up one day and he was like, "Hey Chris, are you still alive? Are you, are you gonna make it?" And I was like, "Man, I'm hanging by a thread here." And he was like, "All right." So I called up my buddy, and he's a project manager for this one company out in Silver Lake. And he was like, I told him like, interview you, like hook him up with a job, and basically I asked him, "Okay, well, what is it? What's the job description? Or what is the position?" And he was like, "I have no idea. Just go there, man. You need the work." And so I went there, and so like here I am, drive to Silver Lake, tell me to park in the back of this brick building, and tell me to go up 4 flights of stairs. It's all the way on the 4th floor. And it's one of those stairwells where it starts outside and then you go inside and you can kind of see what's going on in there, and then you have to go back outside and stuff like that, right? So like, go up to the 2nd floor and, I go inside the stairwell and sure enough, like I'm seeing like, leather everywhere, right? And I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting, right? And then go up to the 3rd floor, right? And then you kind of go inside and you can kind of see the workers. They're basically like packaging, interesting things, I thought they were like sodas or something like that, but sure enough, they were not. And then go up to the 4th floor and really nice office. And, I get greeted by this guy who's a little bit shorter than I am, glasses. And basically is like, "Hey, are you Rich's friend? And I was like, yeah. He was like, "All right, well, why don't you come here and let's chat in the office real quick." And, we start to, get to know each other a little bit. And he's basically like, "Okay, well, so before I offer you this job, I just want to ask you a few different things. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, "Okay, well, are you okay with looking at penises and vaginas?" And like, that was probably the most random question. Like, not everyone gets that question at a job interview.
No, they don't. Very, very few.
I don't think I've ever been asked that question.
No.
In my life, my life as a whole.
Yeah.
So, obviously, like, I didn't know how. I mean, I was like, sure. Maybe the latter. And he was like, "Okay, great, come in tomorrow." And, we shake hands and stuff like that. And, I didn't really understand what the job position was until, I come in tomorrow and he's basically like, "Okay, well, you're going to be helping out our marketing team. And you're going to basically work with, these affiliation programs and all these different things." And so like, for about 3 months, that was basically my job, which was basically looking at like nude pictures and you know, I had some like Photoshop skills at that point, and so like it was basically like putting certain images with certain things. And
Did you have to do any filming?
Okay, hold on. So that's the part where I got to figure out whether or not to talk about this, because like, am I gonna get to see this cut?
If you need to, yeah.
Okay. So we had potlucks every Friday, and we got to like meet all, you know, I got to meet all the other departments in the building. And I remember one time I was chatting with one of the guys there, and he was like, "Hey, so what brought you down to LA?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I mean, I film, I can edit and do all that sorts of stuff." And in my head, I'm like, why am I like trying to pitch myself to this guy? You know? And the VP of that company like actually overheard overheard our conversation, and he pulled me off to the side, and he basically said, "Hey, Chris, listen, I heard you talking over there." This was back in like 2007, and he was like, "So listen, like, we're gonna get into something big." You know, he's like, we're gonna basically be doing videos. Like, videos are gonna be the next big thing, Chris.
What year was this?
This is 2007.
Oh my God.
Right? Videos are gonna be like the future, you know? Like, he was basically trying to pitch me. I was like, everybody's gonna be doing this. And so he was like, "Hey, how would you like to make, you know, an extra buck here?" Right? And he was like, "Yeah, I'll pay you an extra grand." He's like, "I just want you to film our products." And I was like, "Dude, that's amazing." Right? And here I am, like, struggling, like any money right now, just to make ends meet and pay the roof over your head. And so he's like, "Yeah, show up at this one bar area. Like, we cleared it out. You're gonna meet the marketing director over there." So show up, like, really excited just for the opportunity to make, you know, some extra money here. And you know, I see all the products set on this little table and stuff like that. And, you know, I have the camera set just like this, right? And I'm just waiting, right? Because I'm like, okay, well, what are we filming first? You know, I have no idea. And
Just to be clear, sex toys.
Sex toys, yes. Yes.
Just laid out.
Just laid out, yeah.
A multitude of them.
Yeah, dildos, whatever. You
The
know,
whole nine.
the
Okay.
whole literally. And
Cheers.
literally.
It's a family-friendly show.
And I'm waiting here, and then all of a sudden I hear these two females like laughing, entering the building, like entering, and I was like, okay, well, maybe these are like the other employees, because this is like in a separate room in the back,
Yeah.
so I can't really see what's going on. And the laughing and the giggling get louder and louder, right? And I see two women enter the area. And they introduced themselves to me. One's blonde, one's brunette. And, you know, I was like, okay, are these like the marketing directors, or are these other employees or whatnot? I didn't know what was going on. So I'm just basically checking my lenses, making sure everything is focused. And like off the corner of my eye, I see them basically like,
Yep.
like, you know,
Derobe.
getting undressed, and I'm confused as hell right now. And basically they're demonstrating the products. And so I thought I was just filming the products, but it ended up becoming like a demonstration.
So by that
Type
time,
thing.
I'm assuming you were willing to pay your boss back.
Well, see, the funny thing is, like, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, you know, like, I would have to bring this footage home and actually edit it. So like, I had to bring it home, right? And you know, of course, she was just like, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, and
Feeding.
yes, exactly. Like, hey,
Putting food on the table.
paying next month's rent.
Right?
You know, and she was basically like, "Okay, fine. Well, if you're gonna do this, I'm gonna sit here and you're you're going to edit this with me sitting next to you, and I'm going to watch this with you. Of course, like 5 minutes later, she's like, okay, you could go ahead and do this. This is boring. This is boring stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, anyways, like everyone has their like LA story when they come here, and that was
Survival
That
of
was
the
yours.
fittest.
that was mine. You know, like I
Fair
had to do what I had to do. You
Yep.
know?
Yeah. You just had to do to survive.
There were
and
other
eat.
opportunities that were presented to me that I probably don't want to get into.
Yeah. You declined.
Yeah,
We're
that
thankful you were thankful you
I
did.
had to really like, ask myself, okay, well, what legacy do I want to leave behind here? Why did I come here to LA? You know.
But like you said, it's the truth. I mean, we all go through those moments in life
Yeah.
where maybe we're going to do something that we have to do because of survival. And then when we think back, we go, well, if I had another option, I probably wouldn't have done it. But, but again, we have talked about this, that things happen for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that was your first job in LA, and you saw, I guess, the bad or the more negative, experiences, and you just move forward from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say. I mean, yeah, it's interesting.
Different.
Different perspectives.
Yeah.
Right?
Different perspective. Yeah. So.
So you went from the sex toy operation job to
Well, they laid me off.
they laid you off.
Yeah,
How did
dildos were probably not selling at a high clip at that time. This was 2008 now,
Yeah.
right? So like I
And
remember
cut
that
costs.
was the recession. Yeah.
So he got laid off.
Yes.
this
Sorry, I couldn't.
Our co-host is
I couldn't
incorrigible today. So tell us about how you went from this job to helping to launch one of the first YouTube channels ever.
So that week I got laid off from this place. I was like, oh my god, okay, what am I gonna do now? My wife was my wife's best friend, who was dating this very successful person and they lived up in the Hollywood Hills. They had invited us to not the Hollywood Hills. They actually lived up in Beverly Hills. They invited us to a Super Bowl party, and this was going to be like our sort of like first party that we were attending here in LA and stuff like that. And they were telling us like, yeah, don't worry, just show up. You're gonna valet your car up in the front of the house and stuff like that. And for me, it's like, wait, how many parties have I been to where you valet in front of the house? You know what I mean? Like, that was just not my life. And so, like, sure enough, we show up at this party, and there was a guy the whole time that kept, like, I just kept telling my wife or my girlfriend, I just kept telling her, I'm like, God, that guy looks like George Clooney. And I was like, should we introduce ourselves to him? You know what I mean? Like, that guy hella looks like him. And so we go up to him, right, and introduce myself, and I was like, you're not George Clooney, are you? And he was like, oh my gosh, no. I always get these look-alike comments and stuff like that. And so we just start talking, and here he is just wearing sandals and shorts and a t-shirt. Everyone's all like, dressed nice and stuff like that. And he starts pitching to me this thing that he just started. And he was like, hey man, I want to show you something on my phone. He was like, look, check out this video. I just made 50 grand off of this video. I was like, what? Right? And here I am watching it, right? And it looks super campy and super cheesy. And he was like, yeah, man, like Doritos just paid me 40 grand for this, and Pepsi just paid 30,000 for this. And he's spitting off all these, figures and stuff like that, and I'm just confused, right? And I'm like, how in the world is this thing making money? Like, it's just confusing. But my wife, she nudges me, and she's like, hey, just get his contact info, right? You never know.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
Pause just a minute. Sorry. The pack is something.
What is that?
It's off too, that's the funny thing.
Okay. Yeah,
Here's your phone on the floor.
right here. Came out of your
No.
ass.
There's something. There's something in the cushion that's like destroying my butt. It's painful. Like
okay.
a coil or something.
Really?
All right, that sounded really weird.
Yeah.
I just realized how that sounded. Let's edit that out. There's something in the cushion that is. We went from sex toys to
To hemorrhoids.
hemorrhoids. It's very. Over here. Let me just get this over here.
From sex toys to hemorrhoids.
Okay.
This
all right.
summer.
No, it's all right.
Rated R.
3, 2, 1. Back to the YouTube channel.
Okay, so here I am. I get his contact info, and about a week later, he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Chris, I'm that George Clooney guy that you thought I was George Clooney." He was like, "Hey, I'm wondering if you'd be interested in coming to my place. I want to show you like some videos that I'm working on, and I'm kind of curious to see if you'd be interested in jumping on board and helping me out." And so I show up at his place, and it's just his house, and he has like, regular computer setup, whatever, and shows me like the stuff that he's editing, and pitches to me this concept, which is basically word etymology, right? It's just the origins of words. And he's basically telling me that, if we make 7 of these short videos a month or a week, we can make some good money off of this stuff, right? And I'm, not convinced. This is there in 2008. And he was like, "No, dude, this is like really simple, Like he was like, "I've been editing some of this stuff. I'm pretty sure like you could take it to another level." And he was like, "I just want to focus more on the business side of this and like get this out more." And at this point, like my familiarization with YouTube was just going there for music, listening to music, and just watching random stuff. And I didn't even know you can make money off of this. And so anyways, he was like, "Hey, if you can just replicate this video, right, then we'll be in business." And so that's what we did. I started editing these videos, and I was editing like 7 of these short videos a week. And I didn't think really much of it, like sure, I was getting, cool education on the side, like, these really, big fancy words that probably no one would ever use, you know what I mean? But later on, like as the weeks were going by and I was continuing to deliver this and I would see it on YouTube, all of a sudden I would see like 250,000 views, 500,000 views, 800,000 views. And one video that I cut together and gave out to them to basically put up on YouTube, the word was anti-disestablishmentarianism. And that video ended up, like it was insane. That video ended up going over 28 million views. And it was just insane kind of seeing this video that I edited, right? I was like, wait, after that first week, there was like over 1 million views on that already, and I had no idea why people were watching this.
So the money was coming in from sponsors.
Yeah. So then that's when I started understanding, like I wasn't getting paid much at that time, but it was still great because it was consistent, right? And I think that's what a lot of people, when they first come out here, it's like, hey man, I just want some consistent work. And, but at that point I was like, you know what, like this is like really interesting. Like this is kind of bizarre, but it's so fascinating, right? And I was like, okay, well, I told them like, not really getting paid much here, but maybe the most you can do here is involve me on like the back end stuff here. Like I want to know how you're running this operation and why it's getting this many views. And sure enough, he tells me, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. I'll show up to every meeting that I go to. I'll show you everything that I'm doing on the back end. Wow. And so that was an education for me, right? Because he was like, mind you, this guy came from the internet world. And when I started to kind of like understand his background and where he came from, this guy started the first websites for Fox News, for Tower Records, all from a closet. So like, he was ahead of his time, really just kind of like thinking ahead. And he knew that videos on YouTube would explode. And, he was telling me stuff about like algorithms and stuff. So this is back in like 2008. All right. So this is like over 10 years ago. So anyways, here we were 4 years into this process, over 1 billion views on the channel.
Wow.
Over 1 million subscribers. And
now, would you get credit personally on the video?
No.
You were just working.
No, because what he was telling me was at that time we had to make it seem like our host was the one that was doing everything. but it was really us writing the scripts, us with the cameras filming, and us editing the content, you know. So I mean, at that time, like vloggers, they're like, you know, the top 10 YouTubers during that time. There were like 7 of them were all vloggers and stuff. So I think we had to sort of build that connection with the audience. So I think for me it was educational because I started to realize that you know, there was television and film, which was what I was trying to get into, and then there was this online world, YouTube, and it's a separate set of rules. You know, like, you know, here we were catering to an audience that was basically watching our stuff from the bedroom or from their living room, and so there was a different attachment level from an audience perspective. So I think what we learned was you can't make it too fancy, you can't make it look too good, but you can't make it look so amateurish that the person who's watching it can, you know, would say like, oh, I can do that. You know, there was like a sweet spot right in the middle, which we sort of had to experiment and figure out with over the months. So that's what we did. So I did that for about 4 years, and that led me to, you know, meeting a lot of interesting people. And you know, from that point, I got introduced to my current producing partner today. His name is Philip Lawrence, and I remember that time it was interesting because I knew who he was. I knew that he was Bruno Mars's co-writer and producing partner. And when a good friend of mine actually introduced me to him, I was like, wait, no, this is surreal. I was like, does he really want me to actually work with him? And so anyways, he called me up and he said, hey, Chris, listen, I have my brother and my family that I'm moving from Evansville, Indiana to LA. My brother and my sister, they're incredibly gifted, talented singers. And I'm going to be signing them to a gospel album that I'm doing on the side. And we wrote this song, and I just want us to document that. And it's weird because like there are certain people that you meet in your life, and you meet them for the first time, and it feels like you've known them forever. Yeah. And so we just had that instant connection. And so I filmed this whole process, and it was incredible. Like that was the first time I've ever seen a song made from, you know, being written on the paper to him calling his musical director, Bruno Mars's musical director, to come into the studio, play all the musical instruments, get it engineered all in one, like a couple of hours. I mean, it was incredible. So I had all this footage and I was like, you know what, I gotta make a great impression here. So like, you know, you gotta put everything to the side, you know, at that point. And I was like, you know what, I have a good feeling about this. At that point, he was working with Bruno on, I forgot, it was like not their last album, but it was the one before that. So he was gonna be out in New York for like 6 months. And I remember I was like, man, I gotta make this like the most amazing video that he's ever seen. And, you know, took my experience from the Oakland Police Department and putting together like these little videos. And so I made it into like a little doc. And sure enough, he you know, sent it out to him, and he was like, oh my God, Chris, this is amazing, this is incredible. I just showed it to Bruno, and I was like, wait, you showed that video to Bruno Mars? And and then from there, the rest is history, pretty much. We just started working on a couple of different projects internally. And at that point, we were serious enough to be like, hey, why don't we figure out a way to work, you know, continually together on random stuff. So, you know, we did Philip Lawrence is a character, right? So he does these voices, and so like when you're traveling around the world and trying to figure out how to kill time, you know, he does like impersonations and voices. And he would impersonate this old man, this 92-year-old British man voice. Yes. And I remember one day he was like,
what's that character's name?
Napes and Hyman.
Napes and Hyman.
Yeah.
I used to watch that when it was on. When
Yeah, watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, Napes and Hyman.
YouTube.
You will laugh so hard.
Yeah, search Napes and Napeson. Anyways, he was like, Chris, I think we got to turn this into a television show. And I was like, you have no time to turn this into a television show. Like, you're going to be on tour for like the next 16 months. And so I was like, hey, listen, I've been doing some stuff on YouTube for, you know, the last 4 years. Like, there's a formula to this, right? Like, you just got to figure out like a consistency model. and then obviously you're such a character, that's all you really need, right? So like I just came up with some like rough parameters, right? And you know, we would just film at his place, right? Like a bunch of talking head stuff. And then we had maybe like an hour or two where we went out to Hollywood Boulevard and, you know, did sort of like this, you know, followed him around and just, you know, you would sing to random and serenade random women walking the street, or, you know, he would sing along with all those other random characters that you see in Hollywood. And so he leaves off for tour, and here I am with all this content. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna upload a video every Tuesday. I'm gonna pretend that I'm Hyman, and I'm gonna basically tweet him in his, you know, like talk in his mannerism on Twitter, right? And I'm gonna basically try to figure out how to milk this into like the next 3 months, right? Because that was sort of like my time frame, right? It was like, I at least need 3 months of consistent content. So yeah, so like we took one day and I basically milked that into like 20 short episodes.
Wow.
That I would basically upload every week. And then one of them just became viral.
How many views?
That one hit, I think right now it's around like 3 million views, but it was interesting because like, you know, you had like basketball stars like Kevin Durant that would tweet. He's like, this guy Hyman is hilarious, right? And like we would get Jermaine Dupri would like tweet this character, and so.
Well, and it looks like, he doesn't look like a guy in makeup and,
yeah.
gray hair. It looks like that's actually the dude. Like whoever did who did that aspect of it, the actual costume and the makeup and the. I mean that was phenomenal.
So it was Philip's friend from Florida who did special effects makeup, and it took about 4 hours to put that on.
Complete transformation.
Complete transformation, and so like that voice that he was doing by himself, like it was scary. Almost.
It was. Yeah. Just watching him do that, and then having met him in real life, you introduced me to him. He's a totally chill, super awesome guy, and he and his wife and the babies are cute and beautiful, and he's one heck of a character, and that character that he created, Hyman, is legendary on YouTube. So
yeah, and so you know, right now we're taking that concept now, and we're basically pitching it out to a couple of different networks that are interested in, you know, turning this into possibly like a variety show. Or
so Nathan's coming back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah. We'll cross. Yeah. We'll see.
We're knock on wood. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. 2020 is gonna be an interesting year. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. So I have, you know, I love Kevin, and I'm honored to be the co-host. I have some questions I want to fire at you about this amazing man. How long have you known Kevin?
Since high school.
High school.
Yeah.
Freshman year. We're in the same class.
Yeah.
Wow.
1997.
And what was Kevin like as a teenager?
Well, I was into wrestling at that time, and I was actually on the wrestling team, and so I think I would say wrestling was sort of a common thing that we'd probably talk about, or like that we would sort of like try to personify out you know, in the hallways or whatnot, you know what I mean? But Kevin was he was a character, and I think he was outspoken at points. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just kind of like how he is right now, in a way. Like I feel like you haven't really changed
Good.
much. You know what I mean?
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So.
And you've maintained that relationship?
I think so. So obviously, like, you know, there is a point after high school where, you know, obviously, like I went out to LA and I was basically trying to find myself and to try to find my voice. And I think, you know, the beauty about like our relationship is like, even though we kind of went our separate paths and, you know, we tried to discover what it is that we were meant to do and stuff, you know, when we did sort of reconnect, it felt like we didn't miss a beat.
Sure. Well, that's true friendship.
Yeah. So, you know, and I think when that happens, and when you're sort of like, when your passions align, when your philosophies in life sort of align, and you know, you can talk about these things, and then now in the position that we're both in, we can sort of like collaborate and sort of bring, you know, together, whether it's collaborating on videos or bring out the message there through our connections and network. I think it's a lot more. Our friendship is a lot more powerful that way. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I understand that the story behind how you met your wife is an interesting one. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, very random. Yeah, this was still back in college. Out in the park playing football and basically just, tossing the football around with a buddy of mine. And I swear to you, like, I don't know, my wife would probably disagree, but lofted the football to my friend and a gust of wind, basically.
Oh, sure.
Suddenly, what are you?
I'm kidding.
Trust me, if you were there, I was like, wait, whoa,
No,
what is
what's
this?
happening?
Where did this wind come from? Like, I'm pretty sure it altered the path of the football, and it basically hit her in the head. She was chatting with someone else, and so that was Cupid's arrow right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was love at first.
It was
thought.
love. Yes. It was love at first. What the fuck?
And now you have Mason.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that little munchkin.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He's
How big is he now?
full of energy. Yeah. 2.5 years old.
Oh,
Obsessed with Halloween. Like,
you told me that.
Yeah, he's obsessed with Halloween.
What did he dress as this year?
He dressed up as Spider-Man, and then he had to do a costume change into Yoda for his trick-or-treating
Of course.
at night. But yeah, he's
He does a double Halloween costume.
yeah
He really loves it.
Yeah, he does.
How
I mean,
old?
he's 2.5,
Wow.
and so like he's always watching like these Halloween videos on his iPad and stuff like that. And he's singing all these different Halloween songs. But I was like, this kid is really obsessed with Halloween because when you hear him talking in his sleep, right? He's like, I want zombie, I want ghosts, And I'm just like, oh wow, that's pretty interesting. So who knows? Maybe he's a future horror filmmaker.
Maybe.
You never know. And,
You can only hope.
Based on the fact that we're in the middle of this mental health marvels podcast, and you've had such an interesting career. I mean, listening to your journey is so unbelievably wild to hear. What's mental health meant to you?
It's men's mental health month
Yeah.
here in Movember. What do you do for your wellness regimen if you have one?
No, I mean, I think that's a really good question. When obviously when I see Kevin and obviously the stuff that he's been doing, and obviously he's always traveling around the world and stuff. So, I'm able to kind of see what he's doing from afar. But I think it wasn't until he started doing all the traveling and talking to all these people and changing lives is when I started to really pay attention to more of what was going on and how I basically approach my day to day. Because even coming down here to LA, right, as an artist, it's like I think the biggest hurdle isn't like it's all mental. You know what I mean? So I know a lot of people who basically drive themselves to the ground, and I think balance is probably the biggest thing that people have issues with, or it's just challenging, right? And it's like, man, I gotta put the foot to the pedal and go full steam every single day, 7 days a week, 24/7, and
Not having that life balance.
and not having that life balance. And I think that's the biggest. And listen, I think for me personally too, because right now, I have partnership with Philip and our new production company. I'm doing stuff with L'Oreal Matrix right now, so I'm also doing like a docu-series with them. So there's a lot of traveling with there. I'm starting this new YouTube channel with one of the biggest private jet and yacht brokers in the world. So that's actually a really interesting world in itself. And then I'm basically focusing on my own projects as well, like my scripted and unscripted stuff. And I'm also doing this documentary on this pediatric heart surgeon who goes out to war zones in like Iraq and the Middle East. So, so it's a lot of projects, and then obviously having a wife and kid. But at the end of the day, I think it's really making sure that I make time for myself. You know what I mean? I think I'm an extrovert, but I'm also an introvert at the same time in many ways. And I think, like for me, I just started doing yoga at the start of this year. And I feel like that's sort of, even if it's like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and just closing your eyes, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the objective, right? It's just sort of like, how do I just calm my mind? Because your mind is a muscle, you know?
Yeah,
And it's like,
it's the most important muscle we have.
Yeah.
It's the muscle we need to exercise the most, and it's the muscle most people forget about.
yeah,
And I think that you taking this wellness journey and adopting yoga into your life and other practices that help you stay stable is fantastic.
And I was going to say too, the brain is probably the one muscle that is so much unknown about.
Yeah.
Still to be discovered.
Still to be discovered. What we do know about it is we've got to treat it gingerly and take care of it.
absolutely. I mean, it's just like we all have conversations with ourselves, right? And it's like, it's interesting, right? Like you can actually hear your voice in your head,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that,
Trust me, I know. I hear multitude of voices in my head.
yeah. and you know, sometimes you listen to it, and sometimes you bounce it off important people around you. I think that's probably the other thing too, is like, you know, I've been fortunate to have surrounded myself with you know, people that support, you know, my drive and my passion, you know, and I think that's probably contributed to a lot of the reasons why where I'm at today. So
Is that being your wife?
it's being my wife. It's the support of my family. It's the support of my friends, and
So critical.
yeah. So I think, you know, they always say, like, you know, you're a reflection of the people that you surround yourself with, and I think that's kind of like what I learned too when I was at the Oakland Police Department. You know, like I felt like I was fortunate because I was being surrounded by all these older people, you know, wisdom or whatnot. Basically, you know, trying to throw their little knowledge bits into my brain and whatnot. And so, like, you know, 15 years later, you know, you still hear those things, and so, like, you know, it travels well. So, you know, it's traveled well with me. Yeah.
Those sticky memories that stay in our brain from stories told from the past, from those who come before us, that help shape us into who we are today. Mr. De La Cruz, it has been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to chop it up with you, my man. I love that we're brothers and family, and this is just this is
Absolute
another
pleasure.
Thank you.
episode
Seriously.
of Mental Health Marvels, Stewards of Change for people in mental pain, and we have just sat down for about an hour with the main man, Chris De La Cruz, heard his journey, his film journey, his life journey, his wellness journey. Glad to be with you today, my man. And by the way, great hat. He's always stylish with his hats.
I thought we were just doing a podcast.
This is a pod. It's a video audio.
Yeah, but I didn't
podcast.
know that we were being filmed today.
Oh, I tricked him. I totally tricked him. Yeah,
That's why I was telling my wife, I was like, what should I wear for my podcast?
You look like a
You
filmmaker.
look
and
like
I was
a
like,
filmmaker.
and
You
I
look
was like,
You look it's exactly as it should have been, my friend. Exactly as it should have been. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, thank you for watching today. Hit subscribe, click that bell, put a like, the thumbs up on there. Share with at least 30,000 to 10 friends in that opposite order. And be here tomorrow. And every gosh dang day after that, fight the pain to be inspired to thrive today. My name is Kevin Hines. This is Chris De La Cruz and my co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Evans, and we're signing off for the day. Be well. Be here tomorrow.